Hey guys, this is John with CheatSheetPros.com, and there's two MLB games that I specifically want to look at today for stacking in the 6 p.m. slate for August 8th. I did a video last night, but it ended up being 35 minutes, so it probably didn't get uploaded in time for a lot of people to look at it, so I'm starting early this morning, so make sure to check your lineups. So the two games we're going to look at, one of them is Colorado and Seattle. Colorado is a dog here on the road. Now they are 4-1 on the road. The stack can get expensive depending on where you want to go, but there's some of the cheap guys in here that I like. So when you're looking at Colorado, I like Owings down here. He's only 3,400, and we'll look at his production recently, but he's averaging about 10 to 11 fantasy points over the last week and about 8.5 over the last 2 weeks. So I think he's someone that we can fit in there that's cheap to afford some of the more expensive guys. The other guy I like here is Matt Kemp. Matt Kemp is really good against left-handed hitters. He has a WRC plus of 127. He grades out as one of the highest players on Colorado besides Blackmon, and he's averaging about 10 points consistently over the last 2 weeks, and he's only $3,800 on DK. Now, if you compare that to like Nolan Arenado, who's 59, Trevor Story, who's 57, those two guys, if you plug them in, you can get one of these more expensive guys and then probably get Charlie Blackmon, who's another guy that I like. So the reason I like Blackmon is versus left-handed pitching, he's got a 388 WOBA and a 125.9 WRC plus. He's pretty steady in his fantasy point production over the last 14 days. He has a decent ceiling. He is 5,000. That's a little bit more expensive, but with the two cheaper guys, I don't mind it. And he's had 8 plate appearances against this current pitcher, and he's 5 for 8 with 3 home runs. So that's kind of ridiculous. Now, he does play in Coors a lot, so take that with a grain of salt. But the 3 I'm going to go with are Blackmon, Kemp, and Owings. And then depending on how much salary you got left, I would either get in a Story or an Arenado, depending on what position you need. And you can even flip McMahon in here if you want to. He's 2 for 4 against him, so that's not terrible. But they're only projected at 4.7 runs, so they won't be as chalky tonight, and they've been doing pretty decent. And you can get down as low as a cheap stack of 41.40 per person, or as high as 52.60, depending on where you want to go. But those are a couple cheap guys that I like. Team BVP, they've got 30 plate appearances, which isn't a whole lot, but they're hitting 433 off of him, and that's mainly Charlie Blackmon. He's got 5 of the 13 hits there, and a lower 20% strikeout rate. So again, only 30 plate appearances as a team, so take it with a grain of salt, but it is something just to keep an eye on. That's one of the games. The second game I want to look at is the late game. So the California team, so the Dodgers, they're projected at 5 runs, so yes, it'll probably be a little chalky, but I think it's going to be safe and consistent to give you the points that you do need. And so over here, Mookie Betts, he's been on absolute fire. Now, he's a massive 6,200, so you have to get those cheap guys from Colorado in there if you're going to fit in Mookie. He's been putting up 16.3 points over the last week and about 12 per game over the last 2 weeks. He's 3 for 6 with only 1 strikeout versus Cueto. And then you look, the reason I like it is you look right here and you get this 3, 4, 5, 6, and they've all got good BVP against him. So I added after I posted the sheet this morning, a little highlight here. If they've got more than 10 at-bats against that pitcher, and then they're batting over 300, just a little red highlight. And if they have over 10 at-bats and they're batting below 200, just put a little red mark. So you can see Jock here is only 3 for 22 with 7 Ks. So probably not going to put him in there at 4,200, but if you're stacking the game, why not? But if you can get Mookie and then these guys right here, Kiki is only 3,300. He's 3 for 10 with 5 Ks, not bad, but he's kind of up and down. He's been ice cold recently, so maybe you pivot off him and go down to Jock and hope to get lucky, or even down to Pollock. Kiki, Pollock, and Barnes have not done well versus Cueto. You see 3 for 22, 3 for 13, 1 for 5, and then they combine for 14 strikeouts. So as a team, they're only striking out 23% of the time against Cueto, and the majority of those are coming down here at the bottom of the lineup. So we definitely like the top half. Muncy, I'm probably not putting in at 5,400. He is 2 for 4, but batting leadoff and these guys struggling, he's probably not going to get a lot of RBI opportunities, and he grades low, and he really hasn't done anything the last 2 weeks. So I'm really looking at this Mookie, Bellinger, Turner, Seager, and Kiki kind of in that range. And I don't know why I keep saying Kiki. These four right here, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then if you want to put Kiki in there, I don't know, I have a feeling about him tonight. But you've got Seager, who's 13 for 36, and he's got 3 home runs off Cueto. You have Turner, who's 11 for 32 and a home run. And then you've got Bellinger, who's 6 for 19 with a home run. So they've got some good BVP. They should do pretty well off Cueto tonight. I mean, hitting 306 as a team, that's not too shabby. And that's one of the ones that I like. Now, over here on the other side, there's not a lot for pitching in the 6 o'clock slate. Most of the solid pitchers are going early. But I don't mind using Kershaw here. He put up 27 DK points in his last time out. And, I mean, he's got solid numbers. Everybody's talked about the speed he's lost on his fastball, but he's still getting outs. I mean, last year he ended up with an ERA of 3 and allowed an average of 2.11, and he's got a decent bullpen behind him here. It's sitting about number 4. He hasn't pulled enough stats yet for 2020 to load, but San Francisco is a team. I mean, they're sitting in this low-mid, cold territory. You can look here. There's a lot of blues and, low 6s and 7s, so not a lot there that scares me. And then for BVP totals, San Francisco, the projected lineup here, you can see that it's not confirmed yet. They have 189 plate appearances, so that's a good chunk of data. Out of those 189, there is 49 strikeouts. So they're striking out 26% of the time, and they're batting 201. Now, if it was 20, 30 at-bats, I just take it with a grain of salt. 189 at-bats, batting barely over 200. We get this little pop-up here. It says pitcher advantage based on BVP history, so that's something to keep an eye on. So I don't mind using Kershaw. They're hitting 252 as a team on the year. Not really doing that great. I mean, they're 6-8 on the year. They're coming off of a loss. Okay. And then you've got some guys here like Pence. He's 18 for 89 with 19 strikeouts with Kershaw. And then Crawford down here, 6 for 48 with 14 Ks. So Kershaw's got a pretty good matchup. So just putting together a rough lineup for the 6 o'clock slate, I've got something that looks like this. I went Kershaw and Paddock, and let me see what he did. All right, so he's done decent. 18, 15, and 22 DK points. So he's pretty steady. I like him. He was solid last year. Arizona's not real hot right now. So I went paid up for pitcher kind of with Kershaw and Paddock. And then for the Dodgers, I wanted to get Mookie in my first lineup I built, and he's 62. So that's kind of expensive, so I had to dip down on the bottom end. But when he's played, he put up 21 DK points the last time out. So he didn't play. And then he's got 19, 9, 24, 7, 7, 14, 12. So he could hit 20 DK points and go 3X pretty easy tonight. So I did Mookie. Then I put Turner, Kiki, and Barnes in there for the cheap side. I don't really like it as much now. I'm going to flip it around and play with it. Maybe come down on one of the pitchers and see what I can do. But I put this Edwin Rios in. Now, he's not starting every game, but he has been absolute fire. So he's only 2,800 if he does play tonight. I really like him. I have another cheat sheet that kind of runs in the background that pulls the fantasy points per game, and he kind of popped out on it. So you can see he played on the 7th and put up 14 DK points. He only got 1 at-bat here, 1 at-bat here. And then he drew another start on the 1st, put up 16 DK points. And then he had 2 at-bats, got 7 DK points. 2 at-bats, got 16 DK points. So he's been making the most of his appearances. So I'm hoping maybe someone gets a rest tonight and he gets a start. If he does, I really like Edwin Rios at 2,800. I think that's pretty cheap. And then over here I went the 3 Colorado guys I like. I started off with Owings, Kemp, and Blackman. So 34, 38, and 5K. And then that kind of let me fill in there. But I'm going to play with it a little bit. This is a late game, so I've got to watch the lineup and see if I think Rios is going to play or not. If he doesn't, I'm going to have to come down off one of the pitchers and then flip him out. And then I might move Kiki for someone else and find another one-off guy. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for the early slate. There wasn't a lot of other games that jumped out at me for the late one. Let me look, see what the Minnesota KC game is. That one's always exciting. Yeah, this one's kind of tough. This is one that I've been looking at a little bit, but Minnesota's kind of cooled off a little bit. Duffy had a good start, first time out. So I don't know. I'm still torn on that game. That's one I'm looking at. And then let me see, Oakland and LAA. Those were the other two I was kind of looking at. So the Angels could be decent. You can see Colby Allard, if that's how you pronounce it. He has an ERA about 5, giving up about a 280 average, and then a massive whip here. And last year, he only threw 45 innings, but at the 17 innings he threw at home, he had a 192 whip and gave up a 346 average. So I'm kind of looking at some of these Angels. Of course, Trout and Rendon are just massively expensive. So I got to decide if I'm going to pay down on pitcher or if I'm going to go up there. Not a lot of BVP to really look at, but I mean, they've been decent overall. But yeah, those are the biggest two guys there that I'm looking at. And then the other game was the Oakland-Houston game. So this is shaping up to be a really good series. Let's take a look at it real quick. So we have Houston, who's a dog, and I bet them last night at plus 110, plus 120, and they were up a run. And then when I got up this morning, I saw they had lost. But Oakland's got some pretty decent pitching options now. They have Montas going the mound tonight. And I mean, he's been 16 innings this year with a 2.25 ERA, allowing a 2.11 average. That's solid. Number 3 bullpen so far this year behind him. And then Houston's putting up Valdez, who last year across 37 innings gave up a 3.03 average and a 2.07 whip. So that's not fantastic. But this year in 10 innings, he has a 2.5 ERA, 1.03 whip, and a 2.20 average. And the bullpen struggled a little bit. So you can see the money over here is on Oakland. The early going, 100% of the bets is on the under, so I don't like it for a stack. So if you're looking for a sneaky pitcher, I don't mind going down here at either one of these guys and plugging them in. The problem is they could get blown up really easy. Let me see if there's any other pitchers on here that I like. A lot of these are early. So we talked about Kershaw, Merrill Kelly. Man, he's getting expensive. Glasnow's early. Valdez, we don't mind. So he's going up against Oakland, who's striking out 32.2% of the time versus left-handed pitching. So that might be a sneaky one to put in there. But again, GPP only. He could get blown up. We have Montas. That team's only striking out 20% of the time. That's pretty average, but he's got solid ERA, xFIP numbers. So when I'm looking at this, I see his ERA of 1.8, ERA split of 1.93, and then xFIP of 2.14. So as long as that xFIP doesn't skyrocket, then I'm not too worried about it. Paddock, I like him, but he could be a little tough. So he's going up against Arizona, who's only striking out 18.2% of the time versus right-handed pitching, so his K upside might not be there. Zach, he's early. And then I haven't looked much at these other guys down here. Although Duffy might be a sneaky one, but again, that's Minnesota. He could light him up pretty quick. And I don't really like any of these other little cheap guys. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for the early slate. As far as hitters, there's a few guys that jumped out, but I don't know if most of them are going to play tonight. But yeah, good luck, guys. I'm going to try to do some more videos here and there and give you some MLB plays. So hope you take a look at it. Thanks.